Hello and welcome to the Defiant Open Metaverse show. Once again, our weekly look at the best projects building in the Open Metaverse and beyond. Today, I'm excited to introduce the team from Metatope.
Juicebox.
This is Juicebox. My brain. My brain. Let's try that again, shall we? We have the team from Juicebox. If you didn't know what Juicebox is a funding platform that allows DAOs, basically anybody, to fund anything as a group, as a collective. It's awesome, and I'm very excited to have them on the team. I thought we had Metatope first. It's been a very long week, very little sleep. Nicholas, I'm deeply sorry that I got that a bit wrong. But we should also add Django into the stream as well from the team. And yeah, why don't you guys introduce yourselves, and let's paper over my mistake.
No problem.
Everything goes too bad.
I think we should do just an episode on Metatope.
Let's just try to be the Metatope team.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Empty skins, Metatope. It's good. It's good. Make it happen. So this is Juicebox. So, but who are you guys, and what have you built?
I'm Nicholas. This is Django. We're contributors at the Juicebox DAO, which is a DAO dedicated to building Juicebox protocol. It's a protocol for fundraising and running the treasury, the accounting for any kind of group project. So those can be really small group projects or really large ones. There have been some very sizable DAOs, like Constitution DAO, that have used the protocol, and a lot of smaller projects, including things like really small charity organizations doing local initiatives for giving access to like water athletics and things like that. So yeah, it covers a whole range of different types of projects, but basically what it does is the treasury function of collectively managing some assets together. And yeah, I don't know if Django, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, that's like I suppose like the definition of what it does and what it is has evolved since it was deployed. When it was deployed, it wasn't really meant to do anything in particular except solve a very narrow scope problem for ourselves. And kind of operating how do you operate an open source code base and run a business model from it, and figure out what fees mean in that world. So we came up with as few kind of simple levers as possible to be able to express like the if this then that conditions of like, all right, someone sends funds into a treasury, what happens, and under what conditions can the funds leave the treasury, in a way that everything's transparent and all the accounting is in the open, and the community owns the treasury from the get-go. And you can kind of evolve a thing over time via this kind of time concept called the funding cycle. So you can start scrappy without much rules, without much structure, without much decentralization. Like everything can be owned and manipulated and administered by an end user. And then over time, you can evolve into something sturdier.
Yeah, I like to think of it like it's like a piece of software that comes from the future, in which people have access to an open source protocol where they can manage funds with all the different levers that they will need. So it's not built for organizations today. It is useful for organizations today, but it really comes from the future, a future in which everybody has the ability to create little group projects that can scale to be really large ones. And we can get into some of the mechanisms of how it makes that easy.
You said there was a very narrow problem you were looking to solve. What was that problem back then?
Yeah, so essentially, when we're thinking about like how do you, what's a different way to publish and fund and sustain a software project that's not go out and get VC funds and then over time trying to capitalize on usage, and the insight was like, hey, we spend a pretty fixed amount of funds every month to pay like databases and servers and ourselves and whatnot, or however much we want to be paid. And everything else we would spend on like, quote, growth, right? Which is this nebulous thing of like, oh, go and figure out how to run Facebook ads or Google ads or be like extra clever. And a lot of like the initial energy was around development and being around our users and being kind of and creating a community. And like it was one chat thread. It was Slack at the time, where like users and people working on it were all lingering. So I thought, all right, what if we just said the number up front. It's like everyone's got a number. Here's how much it costs to sustain this project. Everyone pays what they want. There's like a suggested fee. So let's say you're using like an iOS app or an Android app, or whatever, and instead of charging a fixed cost per whatever period, it suggests you do that. And then once the number up front is surpassed, then you have like overflowed funds, and that can be refunded back to your users, pushing everyone's price towards zero, the more people that are using it. So now your users are now the energy that's catalyzing growth, because as the thing spreads, everyone's price gets pushed down. But because it's software, the unit economics is like it's marginal per extra user. So theoretically, we can keep costs fairly fixed, and price can tend towards zero. And then the builders kind of maintain the leverage because they're asking what they need every month. So if you want to justify like a raise or something, or you want to expand to a different aspect of the project, you can just say that up front. And if the users are part of that discussion, or if they approve, or if they want to be a part of it, and at this point, like, users is kind of just a community, right? Everyone's in the same boat and can propose such extensions. Then you can expand that budget next month, and then again, folks will fund it if they deem it to be worthy, and if there's extra funds, everyone's price gets pushed towards zero. So it's very much built for like, SaaS, old Web 2 world with like pre-DAO, all this stuff. However, I was like very inspired and intrigued by DeFi Summer and all the stuff Andre is working on, all the initial SNX and Compound mechanisms. And so those two worlds kind of bridged.
It's always the thing. I mean, I come from a world of making films, and it was always, please can I have some money to make a film? And getting funded was always so painful, and you'd spend a year, 2 years trying to get some money together. And then we had Kickstarter come along. But the problem I always found with Kickstarter was there's just so many people asking for money. But what you ended up being was a t-shirt company, and you'd be basically giving people t-shirts and sending out t-shirts. And so much of your money that you got would then be in about redemptions in the perks that you give to people. How is this different from Kickstarter, do you think?
Yeah, so I think the interesting bit is it's community owned, right? So one of the contributors, Mios, has a good analogy where it's you can kind of think about it as a t-shirt or NFT and or like whatever the funds are being used to do, but instead of the centralized artist entity being the one restocking it, the community gets to restock it. So anyone can go in and propose these perks, these tiers that are going to fund the community initiative, that are going to propagate the brand or work towards the mission or whatever that is. And sure, the artist can be a part of that, but it's probably going to be pioneered by like the super fans, the folks who want to be a part and be in support. But it's permissionless, right? So it's granted, whoever kickstarts the project does get some control over like to what extent they do wish to remain in control and what governance means in the context of the project, yada yada yada. But it's like the fact that all the accounting happens in the open and folks can propose like where the funds go and what gets distributed when funds comes in makes it slightly more compelling. Plus, I think the interesting bit about doing this in like a money network is that in fundraising in traditional world, like if I have like $2 and you have no dollars and I give you $1, like the aggregate network doesn't really get any more valuable. But in ETH or any digital currency, if I have 2 and then you have no, and then I give you 1, then all of a sudden the network became more valuable because now like there's more nodes that have the currency. So fundraising in digital currency just makes inherently more sense because you are, as the currencies propagate, you are creating a more valuable network despite what the price says on the side.
So maybe it would be easier to understand if we jump into one of the projects.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that what you just said there, I didn't get it. I'll be honest.
So if you scroll up a little bit on the page, you can jump into either Constitution or Juicebox or Moondao. There are good examples.
Let's go into Juicebox.
Yeah. So basically, maybe it would be useful to understand the essential concept. So on the top right, you can see this Add Juice button. So anybody who contributes ETH to the Juicebox project, Juicebox DAO runs on the Juicebox protocol. It's the first project on the protocol. So if you go to contribute ETH, you can see just under the pay button there, or in this new dialog, when you make a contribution, you're going to receive JBX, the token for this particular project, the Juicebox project. So compared to something like Kickstarter, where you make a contribution and you get the promise of some vaporware hardware device showing up in a couple of years, in this case, you get a token, and that token does two things in the case of Juicebox. The first thing is that it's a claim on the Treasury. So you can refund, or what we call in the protocol's language, redeem that token against a proportion, the proportion of tokens that is over the total supply of the Treasury. So if you look on the left side, in Juicebox, there's 2,800 ETH. So you can, in the future, you could redeem those tokens and get that portion of the Treasury. So it allows you to,
how far in the future, though?
At any point, you could do this. And I'll get into, there's a few more mechanisms that we can talk about that complicate this, but let's just keep it basic at first. A really simple example was like Constitution DAO. So you could go back a page and jump into the Constitution DAO project. In Constitution DAO, they were taking these donations to buy the Constitution. And when they failed to buy the Constitution, they enabled this redemption mechanism. So anybody who had contributed $500 could take their people token, which was the token name that Constitution DAO gave to their token, and they could redeem those people tokens against the Treasury in order to take back their donation because they had failed to acquire the Constitution. So they pay the gas price.
Minus the gas. Yeah.
Pay the gas both directions. But if you're it was a problem for Constitution because their average donation was very low, like $200, $300, something like that. But if you're donating larger amounts, or particularly if ETH is worth less and there's less congestion on the network, the gas is less of a problem. So, but it just demonstrates the fundamental mechanic, which is people can exit the project using those tokens and redeeming them for a claim on the Treasury. So that's really cool because it means that you can make a contribution to a project and you can take a look at all of its funding cycle parameters and decide, am I comfortable with the kind of agreement that I'm making with this project, this Juicebox project, and their opportunity they're giving me to leave in the future if I want to. So that's the essential mechanism.
The way I look at it, though, is if you've raised this money, there is always going to be a tendency for that Treasury to trend to zero, because let's say I'm funding a film, I'm going to spend the money. I'm not going to return profits from that film to the Treasury, because why would I? So is there an assumption that those tokens could be, but probably won't be, and if the project's successful, then it should go to zero? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get to is this people investing, or is this people funding the way they do with Kickstarter, which is I give you money and I'm just happy to see you spend it?
Yeah, it really depends on the project. So in the case of Constitution DAO, those tokens, had they won the Constitution, let's just imagine that hypothetical circumstance, then they would not have enabled these redemptions. So you would never have been able to refund for your initial contribution. And then who knows what the life of those people tokens would have meant? Probably some kind of governance power in a DAO deciding what to do with the physical Constitution. And then later on, people, like they actually did end up doing with the people token for Constitution DAO, start hanging other benefits off of it. Like, oh, if you have a certain number of people tokens, you can claim a free NFT, or etc. And so the life of the DAO sort of evolves and you find out what happens. Other projects, like if you click into Juicebox, or speaking of films, there's one, I think it's not launched on Juicebox yet, but StudioDAO.xyz is going to be doing film production using Juicebox. So they're going to be selling, or they're going to be taking contributions. And if you contribute above a certain amount,
that's important though, right? That's very, very important. Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to be a dick about it, but that language, you have to be so careful, because the moment you say selling, it
depends on the project. So the reason I hesitate around the term is because it really depends on the project. Juicebox protocol is not opinionated about what legal structure you use. And so different projects are using different legal structures. Like, that's the reality of it.
And how vulnerable are you to any legal action on that ground? Are you safe from that? Because people could say, I mean, someone could look at it and say, well, you're enabling projects that are securities to raise money unregistered. I mean, it could be a problem, right?
Yeah, it's definitely something we think about. The site gives a lot of opportunities for project creators, first of all, to understand what it is that they're getting into and to be careful when they're designing their projects, and also to put up disclaimers so that they can work with the lawyers that make sense in their jurisdiction for the kind of project that they're doing. It really depends. Like, for instance, in the Constitution example, they worked with an organization called Endowment it facilitates on-chain donations. And so had they won, theirs would have been considered an educational charity initiative in order to give access to this constitution. That's the model that they came up with in consulting with lawyers. So it really depends on the project. The others are much simpler. Some are just like, what's the Marin County one that
the
Stevie
swim
G's
club? Yeah,
Swim club.
It's a polo tournament, like a water polo tournament.
So that one is, if you look up swim club in that search field, then you can find that project.
I think it's MCSA.
And that project is, I'm not familiar with the details, but it's organized like a straight charitable donation also. MCSA was established to help bring more aquatic opportunities to Marin County, California. MCSA is a California 501c corporation, and it has the number. So they're taking an approach where it really is a donation. They're not selling, it is a donation. And that's the approach that fits their project. So it really depends on the project. And of course, like anything with crypto, it is possible to get yourself in trouble if you are behaving irresponsibly. So be careful when you use the protocol.
Yeah, and on the protocol side, it's all the contracts have very little administrative capabilities bestowed to a privileged account, right?
Well, what I was going to say is, let's make one right now. Let's just go through it because
awesome.
I think that's kind of the kind of the point, isn't it? It's like I'm in the middle of discussions with VCs, discussions with funding mechanisms, and having that, and like here is the create project button. Let's just do it.
Let's do it.
We're going to call the project Supermassive. I am awesome.
Perfect. You can change this, obviously. So
I make films. I would like to make longer form documentaries about crypto.
Because I've seen you've had ideas in the past about making NFT projects and things. So this is cool.
No, I'll tell you what it was. Back in April, I think it was, Dan Olson, who's this incredible YouTuber, came out with a film which was just an absolute takedown of NFTs and everything about. And it was a sort of extended diatribe against crypto in general, which we very much needed. And I wanted to crowdfund a film that would present not a response to that, but a look at what crypto had done right. So at least we had something to balance the force, because all the criticisms, to be fair, were in 80%, 90% valid, but it wasn't kind of complete. It wasn't balanced in the sense that actually for every criticism, there is an opposing view that presents something that crypto has done really well. And that's a 18-month project to put that together. So that's what I wanted to do. And we just couldn't figure it out. And I saw Juicebox. I was like, I like it. I really do, except for the tokens, which is why the opportunity to get you guys on and talk about those tokens was really important. So we can upload
this whole podcast is just a ruse in order to create this project and get a one-on-one.
Oh my God, no, absolutely
totally
not.
Legitimate.
Absolutely not. I just want to show people what you're up to.
We're happy to look at it.
It's human coordination though, right? And I think that's the thing that people don't understand about why DAOs are amazing, because they get caught up in the low participation and what it's very political, but fundamentally they all start around an idea and the ability to take people from disparate parts of the world, coordinate them together around a treasury, around a wallet, and then get things done that would never be able to get done in any other way. Totally. That's incredible. So I guess I can put some project links and everything else. What do I need to put in here?
Yeah, so just hit next funding cycle.
Next funding cycle. Okay, great. So this is where the rubber hits the road. So funding cycle 1 will start immediately after you deploy your project. Once deployed, it cannot be reconfigured. So I need to set up my funding. So talk me through this next stage of it.
Sure. So the main data structure of Juicebox is called
a funding cycle.
It's called a funding cycle. Thank God we had you here. Otherwise, we'd be lost in this kind of I am Jesus a moment. Well, maybe if we just all put our hands up.
There's a screenshot. That's the thumbnail.
Okay, well, you can pick this up, Nick.
Yeah, so basically you're setting up your funding cycle, which are a bunch of configuration parameters that decide how many tokens are going to be issued when somebody makes a contribution. You can also disable them entirely. Maybe Django, you're back. You want to pick it up where you started? What's the fundamental
sure.
structure of
what did I
Juicebox?
say?
Well, you just became Jesus for a moment, and we were expecting to be.
So go for it. So we're on page one.
Yeah, sure. So you get to Yeah, Nicholas, you're like leveling up everything I'm saying, so feel free to pick it up too.
No, do.
So the main data structure is called a funding cycle, which if you want to set a duration for it, essentially all the parameters that you'll be setting here are locked for that period of time. So instead of creating these rules that are locked in perpetuity, you get to set the duration that they're locked, so everyone's on the same page, everyone can contribute, knowing that that's the case. But you can always reconfigure the subsequent funding cycle.
How is that set up? Is that can't be a smart contract? How is that configured?
It's literally all smart contracts. There's no centralized anything in this whole thing except for like front ends and clients, which are totally open for anyone to build.
And also
that's pretty amazing because
Juicebox doesn't have any control of your treasury. We can't reach into your treasury and do anything. It's yours.
Okay. So
that first toggle up there, basically it just says like, do you want automated funding cycles, which are these fixed duration ones, or do you want to be able to trigger funding cycle 2 on demand? So great. Like if you want full control, then you want to be able to set new rules whenever you want. If you want to create some kind of trust dynamic between the community who maybe doesn't know you yet, then you may want to set rules ahead of time. So it all comes down to communication and trust and what you're trying to present to people.
In this case, you've got a lot of reputation online, so don't need to set that. You can leave that off.
Totally. Well,
it's kind of you to say. I think if anyone's trusting me, they need to have their head examined. Honestly,
so maybe you should turn it on.
At least I know I have the option. That's good.
So basically, this lets you lock in a funding configuration for a period of time, so people can know. For instance, you could say if you make a contribution now, you'll be able to exit before the next funding cycle starts, and I'm not able to change the configuration for that period, say 2 weeks long or a month, whatever. So let's turn it on. Let's turn on a funding cycle and make it a 2-week funding cycle.
Yeah, that's set in. Yeah.
And then the next thing is how much funds are you wanting to pay out from your treasury during that 14 days? So you can have people contributing funds, and you can opt to have all the funds then be distributable as they come in to pre-configured addresses. Or you can set it up so that you can only withdraw, let's say, like 4 ETH from the treasury during this funding cycle. So if people put in like 100 ETH in there, you only have access to 4 ETH. That's pre-configured for the duration of the funding cycle. And the community then has access to redeem the tokens that they get by contributing to get that, quote, overflow, which is everything in the treasury minus the distribution limit that you're setting here, which is that kind of price gets pushed down to 0 thing, right? So if everyone puts in funds into the treasury and there's 100 ETH in there and you only put out 4, and everyone divides 96, then everyone's contribution now gets theoretically pushed down towards 0, the more that full treasury number expands. So that's kind of in theory how it works.
For example, you could say it's going to cost me 4 ETH to do the first 2 weeks of work. I need access to 4 ETH. If you guys want to throw in more than 4 ETH, great. It'll be future overflow that I can access in future cycles. It'll be useful budget. I'm not going to inhibit you from giving me more money than the 4 ETH I need right now, but I only really need 4 ETH. So this is a way that Juicebox allows a project creator to convey transparency, but continue to raise above and beyond what their goal is in the immediate future. So you could set, I don't know, what's the first 2 weeks? How much money do you need in the first 2 weeks in ETH?
Another way to do this is you say 0, so the funds just accumulate and everyone has access to redeem their tokens and get their money back for the duration of the funding cycle. And then in funding cycle 2, you can trigger like an actual debit from the treasury. And then
do you have a budget in mind for the first 2 weeks? Let's just keep it simple. Do you have a budget you need for the first 2 weeks, or do you not need anything?
Yeah, we could say 2 ETH.
Great, 2 ETH, perfect.
Yeah,
lock it in. So yeah, you don't need to do the lock until. You can just do add payout.
Okay.
Cool. So now if you manage to raise 2 ETH, you'll have access to 2 ETH. If you raise more than that, it'll just sit in your Juicebox waiting for you to configure funding cycle 2, where you'll be able to set a new budget. That's the essence of what we did.
So if at any point during that cycle things change, project goes under, or a key team member dies, for instance, and the project can no longer continue, how is everything returned to fun? Well, I mean, it can happen, right?
You're the only team member right now, so I hope you don't die.
There's key man risk, the VCs are all over that shit. But if I die and the money needs to be returned, is that automated, or
so we'll get to the configuration? Is there a dead man switch? We'll get to the redemption configuration, which you'll see in the next steps.
Okay.
So we can just save that cycle. You could add other people to the payouts. You could say, oh, I have a producer I also need to pay, etc. We won't.
That's interesting. So if I had a key contributor, that like an artist or something that needs to be paid, or then I can configure that here.
Right.
And
it'll
that's
automatically happen. Yeah. So whenever funds accumulate, anyone can click a distribute transaction, and they'll send that transaction on your behalf. And any funds that are accumulated will be routed to the pre-configured splits up to the distribution limit. So if you do have the like 2 ETH and 10 ETH, and you have 12 total, then as funds come in, anyone can go in and distribute those up to the total.
So Vitalik just gets one because you know he's not great at what he does. He's rich enough.
He's been kind of.
So we'll add Vitalik as a payout. That's fantastic. So this is. I could add as many as I want, right?
That's your payout configuration for the funding cycle 1, and you can go save funding configuration, and we can go to the second step, the token setup.
Okay, great.
So by default, when someone makes a contribution of 1 ETH, they receive 1 million project tokens, whatever the token is called for your project. So that's the setup we're going to do right now. And you can see that initial mint rate is 1 million. You could turn it down or turn it up if you want to change the numbers, but they behave the same essentially.
Yeah. And initially, these are not ERC20s. These are just a mapping in the Juicebox ecosystem. So you don't have to deploy an ERC20 and set a name and symbol. The accounting primitive will stay the same. After you deploy your project, you'll have the option to then issue an ERC20 for all your holders to be able to claim into if they want to use it around Web3. But by default, it's just like a simple accounting thing.
Yeah, it's just accounted for in the Juicebox contract. And so it's not something that's tradable on an AMM or anything. It's just useful accounting numbers inside the Juicebox.
Yeah.
So now we need to decide. We need to make a kind of tokenomic decision on your part, which is how do we want to deal with this stuff? So we can leave the 1 million, I think, for now, just as we explore the other boxes.
So an interesting thing to note here is Juicebox says nothing about how you choose to govern. So the tokens that are being distributed are perhaps just another tool in your toolbox to make decisions with and take community contributions and input in over time. So the levers like reserve tokens, if you have an idea of how you might want to govern, levers like reserve tokens can come in handy to actually influence the issuance of the token over time so that they end up in the hands of the people you want.
Are you telling me that I actually have to do some economic modeling around my tokens?
Low key.
You could also start very simple again and then evolve over time. So it's
that's what I like. That's what I like because nobody knows what's going to happen in 12 months, and who knows what big player might come sweeping in and decide that they want all the tokens.
Totally, but here's the trade-off.
Whale.
Yeah, here's the trade-off: is if you pre-configure where distribution is going to go, you have fewer sticky decisions to make later on. So, for example, this top reserve token section. Let's just say you want 50% of all issued tokens to go to you, and then 50% to be distributed to the person who is contributing funds, right?
So let's say I come into your project, I put in 1 ETH. If you have a reserve token rate of 0, I get 1 million tokens because I put 1 ETH. If you have a reserve token rate of 50%, then I get 500,000 tokens and you get 500,000 tokens, or whoever you put in that add token allocation box below, which can be multiple addresses. So you could say, Vitalik and I are the really core contributors. So we want to get half of all tokens and split them between us so that no matter what size whale comes in, we're always keeping 50% of control of the project between the really builders who are making this thing happen. So reserve tokens allows you to retain some control regardless of how much money comes in.
And it's a harder decision to make later, to be like, okay, contributor, you guys have all the tokens. We propose we issue like 50%. We're going to double the supply and give it to ourselves, right? It's a little stickier if you go in after the fact and choose that.
It's my old compadres at Harmony are dealing with this right now because they're trying to refund people for $100 million bridge hack, and they're issuing more tokens, and nobody's happy about it. Not at all. Yeah. So I think there's no harm in keeping tokens back and then distributing them if you need to at a later date. Okay.
So a couple popular options for this would be here you might add your core contributors, you and Vitalik, for instance, and then you might also add like a multi-sig that you both control, which could be like the DAO's wallet, and the DAO could retain 20% of all tokens issued, which it can use later on creatively, however it decides. So you can add yourself in there and say you're going to take 25% of the reserved. And we can go to the next step.
Very interesting. What about this discount rate?
So discount rate is the number of tokens that are issued in the funding cycle compared to the last funding cycle. So am I explaining that correctly, Django?
Yeah, totally. I like, for simplicity, neither of these two toggles are very important given your current setup, but we'll go through them just to see if we can communicate what they are. Just
So basically, if you set a discount rate of 10% in funding cycle 2, for instance, you'll be issuing 900,000 tokens per ETH
Right.
contributed in the second cycle. And if you let that funding cycle configuration roll over to cycle 3, then you'll be issuing 10% less in funding cycle 3. So this is a way to sort of encourage people to get in earlier. Again, it's optional. You don't have to do this, but it means that people who were there from the start have a greater proportion of the tokens relative to their contribution.
And it's not like a bonding curve on who gets in first. There's no FOMO still. It's still like an open, like anyone can go in and it'll keep issuing tokens at a rate. If you get in during this funding cycle, it's just if you get in the subsequent one, fewer will be issued per ETH contributed. So if you imagine this compounding over time, then you might get towards that initial curiosity of yours about like the business model, like the value. Now you have more funds coming into the treasury and fewer tokens going out. So the redemptive quality of each individual token is a little bit greater. But again, now you get into like the stuff that's probably irrelevant for the beginning of a project.
Okay, so my question is here. I get all the different parameters that are in there. I think for a lot of projects coming in, I mean, they may find this stuff hard to wrap their heads around. Totally. What kind of support is there, and can they kind of reverse engineer what other projects have done to understand how they've set up?
Absolutely. So we're working right now on a recipe book, which will allow you to essentially copy paste other projects' funding cycle configurations and paste them into your own project. It's not live yet, but it's something we're working on. The other thing we do is if you come into the Juicebox Discord, it's discord.gg/Juicebox. You can get one-on-one support with literally with Django and me or other members of the DAO, and we'll walk through this. Every Friday, we do live sessions exactly like this. So there's a lot of support and there's a lot of great material. Also, info.juicebox.money is our documentation. Lots of good stuff for developers, but also just for project creators. You don't need to be a dev. But these configuration parameters are complicated for sure, but they're also important. I really believe that Juicebox has like narrowed down all the most important concepts into these handful of things: funding cycles, discount rate, redemption rate. These are essential. So it's worth spending the time if you're going to create a project.
Yeah, I think that's important as well, because you don't want people to be frivolously just putting project proposals up and just spamming Juicebox with crap, basically, which is
what's cool is if you get to understand these parameters, you can go look at other projects and look at their funding cycles and say, no, I can't even redeem in this project. I don't know these people. I don't trust them. I'm not going to give them any cash because I want the opportunity to be able to exit at any point. And so you get to be a little bit wiser about it. We think it's going to take a while for lots of people to understand, but ultimately these mechanisms are really good. They're really smart.
I also think Juicebox.money, as it's currently laid out, was initially built to stress test the protocol, and it kind of became the landing place to interact with the protocol. But it's a big work in progress. Like, there's a lot of opportunity to make other front ends that crop down half of the parameters and just propose like, oh, you're trying to fund a film. May I suggest this starting point that gives you ultimate flexibility to then go to Juicebox.money later and then tease out subsequent funding cycles with, more verbose stuff.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of Web3 concepts here which people may not be that familiar with, and if you're kind of getting community projects to come and be part of this, there's a kind of a burden around launching your own token and having a token that can be traded on Sushi or Uniswap, particularly when a community comes in and goes, why aren't you pumping your token? Why aren't you putting more energy into marketing this token? Because I've invested in it. And it's like, no, but you didn't. You funded it, and that's it. There is no obligation anywhere. So there's a lot of management around that needs to happen as well. But I think it's very functional and it's very clear, and there's some good concepts in here. And I feel like, I mean, if just coming from my community, the just funding films, funding creative arts projects is just horrific. It's a horrible thing to do, and it's a horrible process, and nobody wins really. And projects that get funded, you think, why did they get funded? And then other projects do get funded, don't get funded. You're like, this is insane. I don't think this is the solution to that, but it will definitely help people to think about how they're setting up in a more sophisticated way and gain exposure to potentially, the future super fans of their projects in a way that just wasn't possible before, having a stake in something.
What's cool about it is that it's been used very popularly, and people probably know Juicebox mostly as a fundraising tool akin to Kickstarter with tokens. But it's actually really useful as like a treasury. So that means that you can use it not only for raising funds, which is to say accepting contributions or other revenue streams, even multiple revenue streams. Like let's say Supermassive were to then drop an NFT, you could point all the revenues from that NFT at your Juicebox. So suddenly now your budget is growing due to direct contributions and NFT sales, etc. And then you can also manage the payouts to your contributors. So it's also kind of like an accounting software for paying the people who are working on the project, who are really building the thing. So it's more than just fundraising.
Let's dig into that. So you said point revenues from an NFT at your Juicebox. Tell me what you mean by that, because this has been front of mind for me for the last 3 months. Like, how do we manage treasuries better?
Totally. So we can, maybe if you want to open a separate tab and go to the projects thing, we can go.
Oh, we could also go to Rinkeby. I think that some of the NFTs. Well, we have an interesting inline NFT distribution mechanism being tested on Rinkeby right now on Rinkeby.juicebox.
How do I get there?
Rinkeby.juicebox.money.
Juicebox.money.
Yeah. So this is coming out very soon. We're in the testing phase of it.
I can't tell you how excited I was to have you guys on, because like, this is my jam right here. This is like all the things that I ever thought might be possible in Web3.
Let's go back to launch your project here.
In the middle, yeah.
And then funding cycle, the second tab.
Funding cycle.
Yeah, this is just for the example. So now you'll see a third tab there, NFT rewards, where you can create really simple reward tiers so that as folks contribute to your project and do so above certain thresholds, you're basically dishing out these NFTs that you can leverage for on-chain voting if you wish, or just for distribution. Yeah, so you can kind of do it in line here, or I think as Nicholas is getting into, you can route funds from other marketplaces into your treasury.
So basically, just to summarize, this feature that's about to come out will mean that you can set a threshold. If someone contributes more than X ETH, they get an NFT.
Yeah.
So you could say more than 1 ETH, you get a certain NFT, more than 2 ETH, you get a different NFT. So you can already start, and then you could use those NFTs as, say, governance tokens in your DAO if you want, rather than the fungible, or not even fungible at all.
Yeah, the power users. But again, you said you can route funds to your Juicebox. Is it a wallet then?
So switch tabs back to the other one, and we can go look at the Juicebox project. Yeah. So if you hit projects on the top left.
Oh, yeah. Sweet.
Then if you hit that one, exactly.
Yep.
So on the right side, you can see all the activity. And if you scroll down a little bit further, that happy birthday Banny. A couple weeks ago, it was the 1-year anniversary of the launch of Juicebox on mainnet. And so I made this birthday Banny NFT, which is that our mascot, Banny the banana, popping out of a birthday cake. And when I sold that NFT, I wrote a contract and deployed the contract to mainnet. And it showed up on this website, mint.fun, which indexes all new minting NFTs, which you can check out. It's very cool. Mint.fun shows all projects that are minting currently that have not yet minted out, and they're ranked by which have minted the most in the last hour. A little bit salacious.
Porn.
So if you scroll up to the top, you can search for birthday Banny on this page. So basically, all that Mint.fun does is it generates pages for minting every NFT. So I made the contract, and Mint.fun just picked it up automatically and created this mint button. The mint is over. It was only available for 24 hours while it was the birthday. And when a person minted, they paid 0.01 ETH, or they could put whatever price they wanted. And the funds immediately went into the Juicebox. They don't sit in the NFT contract at all. So the way that I did this is in the contract, when you click the mint button, you send ETH, and the mint function calls the Juicebox protocol's pay function and forwards all the ETH that came in from the mint directly to the Juicebox. So if you scroll down on this page, every time you see that little birthday Banny, that was someone minting an NFT on my contract, and the proceeds being forwarded into this Juicebox project. So you could do something similar. And in fact, you could have multiple NFT projects or other revenue streams doing the exact same thing, with all the funds ending up in your Juicebox and then being available for you to pay contributors like builders.
And everyone purchasing the birthday Banny can also get the project token, just like they would having clicked the button. So basically, the purchase of the NFT replaces clicking the button on the page, the same behavior happens since it's just contract composability, right, over time.
So anywhere you could sell an NFT, you could be fundraising for your Juicebox. So that could be inside of crypto voxels, metaverses, or on OpenSea or anywhere.
That's really interesting. So we could have a community fund where everyone could share in the success of that fund because they own tokens which they can redeem against the treasury.
True.
Okay.
And they can also be empowered to go and make their own revenue generating NFTs or what have you, and point the proceeds at Juicebox. And great, thanks for helping out. Thanks for building the revenue and building the treasury.
Yeah, because do you remember the old MTV logo? There were
yes, awesome.
There were just like there were a ton of artists that made variations of that logo, and it feels like in the Web3 era, you could do the same thing. You could say, right, we're going to allow this logo to be taken on and crafted into a gazillion different iterations, and people can own this, but we want to spin some of that revenue back in because we own the logo, for instance, but at the same time make sure that the artist that created that logo gets paid and created that iteration, but also that the community benefits from the net growth of the treasury as a result of economic activity. Are you telling me that this is possible through Juicebox?
I think you could make a very interesting spin on something like NounsDAO using Juicebox as the treasury piece. So rather than just holding the funds in a on-chain governance protocol, you could actually be using Juicebox, which has a lot more flexible opportunities for bringing more people in to be building that treasury together. And yes, I do think you could do something like what you're suggesting with Juicebox.
Yes, because for me, that's the impossible dream here. We always talk about creator-owned economies and community-owned economies, and it always feels like it's a one-way street, because at some point I am the overlord creator. I make stuff, and you are blessed to be in the shadow of my magnificence. And everyone goes, oh, yeah, I fancy a bit of that. But there are a bunch of people who really are good at doing stuff in a very narrow context, for sure. But you want to make sure that they contribute. But at the same time, you're spreading this message in which we all benefit, people. And the only benefit really is you have an NFT, it goes up in value, it goes down in value, the floor price goes up. It's so basic, all of that, and it pisses me off, to be honest with you, because you're trying to, as a project creator, you're trying to invest time and effort into price and not into value, and they're not the same thing. Whereas this, I think, is a really interesting way of tracking all of that. I think in terms of UX, what I'm looking at, it's tough to decipher, but I love the functionality, and I love what it's doing to my brain right now in terms of what I'm thinking and where I'm going with it, because all of the things that I wrestle with, like I know, for instance, that setting up a DAO, having your own token, is the surest way to be able to pay people and give them something meaningful that you can control. But at every single turn that I make along that journey, it's just like I am creating a shitcoin. That shitcoin will get pumped and dumped, and it will get speculated upon, and the value that I put in will be, a lot of it will go into just making sure that that thing stays valuable, which I don't want. I don't want to do that. I'd much rather figure out a different way to do that. And this, being able to point things back, being able to manage treasuries in this way, but also having a mechanism by which it's wholesomely bringing that value back to the people who are funded in it. That's I mean, we have to be careful with that word invested, because like you can be invested in something emotionally, and I think that's what we want. We want people to be emotionally invested in stuff that they love, because otherwise it wouldn't be love.
Yeah, maybe we could take a look at some other projects to
let's do that.
And just to add one thing to the MTV example, which I think is like the real superpower, is you can imagine the MTV logo maybe being twisted onto like some Blink-182 poster, and then let's say both MTV and Blink-182 have treasuries. Then that work of art, now you can split between the two treasuries. So now you have two communities that are benefiting from the distribution of this NFT or this item. You can have N communities, right? So now you can create art that the sale of which gets split between several communities. So you basically are combining energies that are then propagating a piece of content or a message or whatever across. So you don't have to just be narrowly scoped to your project and funding for you. If there's a successful community on the side, it's a great way to bootstrap, to align with them, to get like, create art and then start creating cash flow for not only yourself, but for others as well.
Let's jump into Lexicon Devils. I think that's a good example. So if you search Lexicon, hopefully
is it all one word, Devils?
Yeah, I'm not sure what. Try that.
Right.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. So Lexicon Devils is a voxel architecture firm that works in multiple metaverses, but I'm most familiar with their work in crypto voxels. I think if you hit their URL, you might jump straight into their metaverse who can show people. But basically, Juicebox DAO, there was a proposal in Juicebox DAO that was approved by the DAO to fund Lexicon Devils to build a metaverse headquarters for Juicebox. And through this experience, they created both a 3D space in crypto voxels. It's like a social, you load up a metaverse in your web browser. You don't need to install any software. That's what makes crypto voxels cool. And we would host our town halls there and have dance parties. They most recently hosted a concert called Forming. And after like many, many weeks, even months of being funded by Juicebox to create this 3D space, they found it so empowering to be able to raise funds and transparently dole them out to the builders who are making these 3D spaces that they sell as like a consulting service, that they decided to do this concert called Forming, where they would onboard musicians. And I guess their website's not working. Maybe I don't know if Django, you can find the link somehow, but basically they decided to help other artists, principally musicians in this case, to build their own Juicebox treasuries, because they felt the best thing that they could do with their experience was teach them that they too can start creating community treasuries for whatever kind of project they have in mind. So I think we're really going to see a lot of this happen, and definitely the interface is a little bit complicated. It's not something that's intuitive. It's not built like Web 2 software, where the idea is to reduce the friction as much as possible so that you can mindlessly drooling use the interface anyway as a kind of behavioral psychology manipulation of as many users as possible to get them into the funnel. No, this is a tool for building projects, and it requires that you be awake in order to be, especially to be the creator of those projects. You need to be awake and thinking carefully about what you're doing. But if you are interested in raising funds for whatever your idea is, and that's why it's a little hard to explain what Juicebox does because it's so freeform, but whatever your idea is, Juicebox is a really cool tool because it lets you and basically what Juicebox DAO itself taught me is that if your project has on-chain revenues, especially if it's an open source project, be that a kind of piece of software like a smart contract or an NFT project, which are also all open source projects, then you can be pointing those revenues, especially if they're recurring revenues, it makes it really great. You can point those revenues into a Juicebox project, and then you have a treasury that you can use to dole out funds to people and continue building. So you don't need to be focused on pumping a token price. Instead, you can be doing what Django was really motivated to do when he created the protocol in the first place, which was just raise enough money to be able to build something. That was the whole point of Juicebox. And I think that's why it's really special, because it's really not about creating tokens. It's about creating projects and putting things into the world and funding them.
Yeah, it was about like maximizing your raise value or whatever. Like, oh, it's like the whole goal is to fundraise. Like, it'd be really nice if you could spend time actually doing the thing you give a damn about.
Yeah, that's always the thing, isn't it? It's so much of what we read in the journals is about such and such raised X at an X valuation, and it's all bullshit because, all that means is that the people that they hire know that they raised a shit ton of money and will charge accordingly. Really, the thing that matters is, can you get people together to make something, and can you get people aligned with you to do that? And
totally, and it's a big part of Juicebox actually is having the numbers out in the open. So as funds come in and people feel the potential energy there, it gives contributors from the open internet confidence to approach the project and start doing work, knowing, and especially if they have some semblance of like a governance process already structured, they can start to do work, and then they can start to like propose that some of those payouts be distributed to them the following funding cycle. And if the project chooses not to, then it's like you're creating this expectation for future potential badass contributors who may see it as so you kind of create this situation where it's very delicate because it's all in the open, but it's very empowering because it's all in the open.
I feel like Web3's great breakout heavy metal band should be future badass whale contributors at some point. The thing that pissed me off the most about the whole 3 hours collapse, you know how much money just disappeared. It just went up in smoke. And like, I'm looking at this and how meaningful just 61 ETH or 60 ETH or 70 ETH will be to a small project. Think how many small projects, how many independent developers could have built something epic that was just like a widget or a small thing with all that money that went up in smoke. God, it pisses me off.
All
so
because
much.
we were betting on a stable coin people in the know did not believe in.
I know, right? So, people say bear markets for building, but you don't need that much to build and sustain yourself and keep going. As long as you just think, okay, what does the sustainable model look like? And I'm really excited.
And those who leverage 2 ETH really well tend to be able to the ones who attract like 10 ETH and 20 ETH, so like the actual work being done with the resources available, it speaks volumes to what a team can accomplish or a person can accomplish.
Hop over to that Lexicon Devils tab. If you just prefix web dot, it'll work. It should work. And we can see what this group of people has actually built.
In the private.
I have the Metatope team on standby. I promise you guys I will get to you. I will.
We can look another time.
It's not working. It's not working.
Don't worry about it.
I left a link in the chat too.
You left the link in the chat. Okay. Alrighty. Let's try this. This is Lexicon Devils in voxels. I need to get into crypto voxels in VR actually, because I'm spending an awful lot of time in VR these days, and I really wanted to go. I'm playing Pistol Whip mainly. I play Pistol Whip and I do a lot of fitness in VR, and I'm going back into Somnium a lot as well.
If you hit F, you can fly around in crypto voxels right now.
Yeah.
WASD to move around. So this is the Juicebox.
Hey, look, there's our friends Bankless.
Yeah, there you go. Metaverse Juice Bar. Oh, that's great. WAGME and Lexicon put in the Bankless. There was recently an article in their newsletter about Juicebox. So this is like a education center and hangout spot. There's all kinds of cool stuff. And if you move outside, you can zoom out and see the crazy building that they've built. It's really wild. Shark DAO, another great Juicebox.
Oh my God, there I am.
If you click it, I think actually it might have feedback, but it'll play the live thing.
That's too meta. That's too meta. I can't. My brain can't handle it. Oh, this is awesome. They did a great job.
They did.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of pixel and voxel type environments, but that's awesome. Hey, look at your boat.
Imagine like 30 people in here on like a Saturday afternoon, and on screen is like DJs playing live from wherever, and like a chat room of people talking about their art or whatever, and then meanwhile everyone who's playing knows that they're getting funds that have been fundraised for that event streamed to them in real time. So you kind of create this idea of a moment, right?
It's so inspiring because I think most people think of the metaverse as this poorly attended place where it's impossible to find anything, and there's no leadership to guide you to where the heat is. And I think we can fix that. I think we can definitely fix that, but it's going to take a bit of effort because there's so much to discover and so much to learn. But I mean, there's no doubt that if there's money attached to it, people will follow the money trail because that's what they like to do. That's awesome.
This is so listen, I really want after the show, let's finish your project at some point, because I have a feeling. I mean, I know I would make a contribution, a little donation. So.
Well, listen, a TBD is what I'm saying, because obviously there's more than just me curious about the project. I want to use these things and I want to build stuff and I want to experiment, because my brain has always been thinking about how we take the kind of goodwill of being like trusted maybe content creators and turn that into something where we could actually do something with it. But I'm always like, tell stories, make people fall in love with those stories, monetize that love, but then share the spoils. And it's always the share the spoils bit that I've never been able to figure out. And I'm like, okay.
I think there's a lot of people out there who would love to see you do something long form and have the budget to do it, and have appreciated your content enough to pitch in $100 and feel great about it. Actually,
I think that would be awesome. Well, listen, Nicholas and Django, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. After the break, we're going to have Metatope on the show as well. Juicebox DAO, juicebox.money is where you need to go if you want to get more information on how to get your project funded. Also, check out the Discord.
Please do.
If you can get some time in with Django Jesus, as we, I think it would definitely be valuable, because you want to do this thing right. Anyway, when we come back, we will have Metatope But thank you guys so much for joining us. And if you have any final words, now is the time to say them.
Thank you so much. This was great. Come to the Discord. We have Town Hall every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, US Eastern Time. And we'd love to see you, meet you, and talk to you about your project ideas.
Awesome. Well, we'll be right back with Jordan Walker and Joseph from Metatope right after this.
Are you building dynamic NFT drops, on-chain DAOs, or complex Web3 applications? Do you need streamlined solutions to deploy pre-built or custom smart contracts without exposing your private keys? ThirdWeb is a free open source and multi-chain developer tool for devs of all skill sets building on the blockchain. In less than 7 months, 50,000 developers have launched more than 200,000 projects across the platform. Take advantage of a robust set of front-end and blockchain SDKs, popular UI and UX components, and ThirdWeb deploy and release, the most secure and streamlined framework for displaying and deploying your custom smart contracts. ThirdWeb has powered major brand projects including NFT drops for global gaming powerhouses, 100 Thieves and Fnatic, and more recently with Boohoo, a global fashion label welcoming its fans into Web3 with the launch of the Boohooverse. The future is here. Start building for free on ThirdWeb today.
So I say the future is here, and we have people who are literally building the future right now. It's the evolution revolution. It's the team from Metatope, Jordan Walker and Joseph. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
Of course. Joseph.
How are you guys?
Good. Where are you? You look like you're in a caravan or something.
I'm
cabin.
I'm just in my backyard. We're all good.
Very nice. Listen, let's jump into it. Metatope. I'm on the website right now, and I think I met you guys at NFT NYC, which is why we set this up in the first place. But give us an overview of what you're building, what it is, and how people can get involved.
I'll take it.
Sure. So, Metatope is really this exploration into how far we can push the idea of the digital identity and really trying to extend the capabilities of digital interactions. We came into the space and we saw such a valuable technology within NFTs and truly for the first time, having the capability to facilitate property rights around digital goods. But the use cases were, quite limited. And we look across the industry, we see these really, celebrity-like pieces of IP, if you will, whether it be the apes or the punks or whoever, and they're photoshopping pictures of their asset onto their body so that they can share it across socials with their friends. And we said we can do better. So what you're seeing today is the MT Skins assets. These are 3D, fully interoperable assets built inside of Unity and secured by the Ethereum blockchain. We'll talk about the assets a little more later on, but what makes this so special is the application that we've built not only for these assets, but for the entire space. So within our mobile application houses our groundbreaking markerless motion capture technology. And in real time, we extract data from the human body and we're able to animate the NFT and bring it to life.
So this is the secret sauce. You were demoing this at NFT NYC. This is proprietary. And I think people probably, I've been trying to experiment with VTubing on this channel. I often have like an avatar and I experiment with like a Magic Leap controller or, I've used Deepfake Live to generate like my face as Tom Cruise or other things and, all sorts of different things. I'm also building a motion capture volume at the office here using Vicon, which is like the industry standard optical motion capture thing using infrared cameras. It's very expensive, but I think that's out of reach for most people and it's very precise and it's very good. But we want people to be able to experiment with this technology, to be able to inhabit characters in a real-time environment, do TikToks, do Instagram posts, create content live in the moment as they feel it, but as another character. Is this the moment that we see it happen? Have you basically solved that problem?
I believe so. We have a few things that are core beliefs of ours. One is, as an attorney, before this, in my prior life, the blockchain smart contracts, non-fungible tokens are revolutionary, and Walker touched on how special they are in terms of our future technology and our identity as a whole. What we believe is it's way too hard to interact with these things currently. So we need to make them, number one, easy to use and accessible, and number two, interoperable. So those are two huge focuses of ours at Metatope, is to make this tech and these non-fungible tokens, these identities that go beyond what people conceive as a non-fungible token, and make them able to go cross-platform, you tie other familiar technologies to them, like rather than just a Snapchat or Instagram filter where you're doing only facial capture, we're doing full body plus face plus hands, and that is what we believe is the secret sauce here and into this future, as you alluded to.
There's lots to dig into here. So that you say that it's difficult for people to take these assets and really use them as anything other than a static PFP. Where do you think an empty skin could be used? How do you see that being used in like different applications, and how are you making it easy for people to do so?
So day one, our initial focus, before we take a dime from anybody or sell skins, NFTs to anybody, is we will have our mobile application on iOS and Android for everybody. So in there, they won't be non-fungible tokens, but they'll be, that app downloads coming very soon. But they won't be non-fungible tokens. They'll be our models that will be minted as non-fungible tokens, and they will be accessible to anybody to experience our tech stack, to be able to experience this markerless motion capture technology, make it really easy, share it on your camera roll, save it on your camera roll, share it on social platforms. And that's step one. Step two is we have, we're very fortunate to have Nolan Bushnell, the founder of Atari, the inventor of Pong, on our board. And his Web3 company, Moxie, is building some incredible things in the gaming space. So very soon, we'll be able to incorporate that relationship with Moxie and use these assets cross-platform, not only in social media, but then as your gaming identity as well, and go into multiple games. So those are just two things that we're working on initially.
I really want to see a demo of this. I actually tried it out in New York. I stood in front of the camera rig setup that you had, and it worked pretty well. Do you have a demo that we can show people at home how this works?
I just shared a YouTube link from a recap video of NFT NYC, and we'll be at NFT Expoverse in LA with an updated app with substantially better tracking.
I mean, the good thing about tracking is that, wow, is it improving fast? Oh my good God. Like the sophistication. And also it's one of those things, I'm presuming it's an AI based tracking solution. So it'll just get infinitely better over time. I remember this.
And so just to add on, with what Jordan was talking about, the social media aspect is huge, because we think it's such an easy way for the Web3 space to really share, who we are and what we're doing, and really get these assets to be in a position where they are easy to share with others. Streaming applications are another really big utility. We have a proof of concept to stream these assets as you inside of Twitch. So there's some really big applications, and we're trying to create an asset that you can take across any digital interaction.
Not trying, we have.
So. You have. Yeah. And how does that work exactly? Because interoperability it's a meme in many ways, because it's one thing to be able to transfer traits, data, metadata about an asset. That's fine. That translates very nicely. But there's no reason why a cartoon rendered asset like, a Bored Ape, that has no place in, a World War II sim, doesn't belong there. but are we saying that we can have that asset in there and play it in there? No, not at all. So what's your interpretation of interoperability? How do you see that?
So our team's built some really incredible things. A core feature of our tech stack is what you see represented on the blockchain isn't necessarily the entire ecosystem. It's really just a key. So whether it's a JPEG, even a GLB file, you're never going to have, even if it's a 3D file, you'll never have all the possible iterations and all the possible use cases. So the way we approach this is that your non-fungible token, the metadata is what we care about. That gives you the traits of your asset. And we are able to construct several different 3D versions of that depending on where you go. So with our platform and with any of our integrations and future integrations, all you'd have to do is verify that you own that token based on the metadata, all the different features. It will then in application reconstruct the model. It'll reconstruct the model based on that metadata, whether it's a voxel version of it, a high poly 3D, a mid poly 3D version, even a 2D representation. So we're able to reconstruct all of that based on the metadata and based on our tech stack. And that's how we're able to go game to game, because a lot of these, the idea of an avatar on a game that you can maybe eventually go somewhere, or a PFP standard that you can maybe download the files if you're lucky, you still can't do anything with them. So we have to build those integrations and in order for people to use them. And Joseph is much more technical than me, so I'll let him chime in here.
So I do want to go back to the World War game scenario. Even in real life, there's people that go out into a field, put on old uniforms, and reenact every possible war we can imagine. So people want to dress up and act out a certain scene. If a game agrees to the partnership, there is no real reason the avatars can't go into that game and then dress up, because our avatars are able to put on accessories, jackets, era-specific items, put the hat on. Yes, the face and inside that jacket may be different, but they still get to put a little bit of their identity out. And certain games, certain publishers of games may be very controlling of what is allowed in. But if they recognize the overall ecosystem of how many more players will come to their game, if they just allow this identity to carry through, I think that opens up a whole new world.
Have you spoken to games publishers? Have you presented this to them?
We are actively working through several different relationships. I mean, Jordan, do you want to just touch on the Moxie relationship, and then I'll get into the tech?
Yeah, I did. So Moxie, again, one of their founders, Nolan Bushnell, founder of Atari, inventor of Pong, Chuck E. Cheese too. We will be integrating with their games. They have games that they're developing, and then they also act as a solution to onboard Web 2 games into the play and earn model. So we are integrating with their ecosystem. You want to add anything?
Yeah, we're providing the core assets to Moxie that will be the base identity for all of the participants of the Moxie verse. So very core to what they're building, and what's really awesome is, going back to the idea of a JPEG, all of these assets were built inside of Unity. So these are game engine friendly. These can very easily be ported over into Unreal Engine, but it literally makes game integration seamless. From the moment that anytime we find partnerships, there's no R&D. It's integrate.
We're talking seamless in that at the same render quality, they can carry over. Now, in Moxie's situation, what they've set up, there's still going to be certain restrictions. Like, as of now, the official announcement from Moxie is that those characters can have 24 additional items loaded onto them. So that's the ceiling for that game. Other games may have different restrictions. So we're going to work with each game partner, understand the needs of that game, and act as a translation and clearinghouse to allow these characters to be transferred in the right level of quality with the appropriate accessories, and then also allow for that, you know, security verification that this character is allowed to be used in that game that you established ownership, should a game not have that capability.
So does that mean you have to create multiple instances of each avatar for the specificities of each platform you're going to be putting it on?
Ultimately, we're talking about an interoperability standard. So there's a series of levels that we're talking about. We're not going to be building it like for every slight variation. Each of the games, some of these games are going to have to accommodate as these standards become more solidified. So we're talking about, like, as an example, just on the polygons, a high poly, mid, and a low. And then we're talking potentially a low render cartoon style version that's associated with that character.
It says here that these are photorealistic. These don't look photorealistic. No offense. Is that the intention with the final NFTs when they drop, that they will be photorealistic?
So yeah, what you're seeing here is concept art. We have lots of different textures, lots of different skins, and we're playing with the different iterations of them. So yes and no.
And again, it depends on where it's being loaded into. So
Okay, so in Unreal Engine, it will be photorealistic because, you know, Lumen.
If it's capable, even in certain metaverses, the potential is there. But in certain other environments, it's just if the ceiling of that environment prevents it, then we have to bring that down. So again, that's like reducing the number of polys, effectively reduces the finer details beyond just a bump map being put on.
Yeah.
And so you've obviously gone down a cyberpunk route here. What was the thinking behind the design, essentially?
So we teamed up with Jared Morantz. The guy is a blast to work with and has really taken this world building role to an entire new level. I mean, he's already got like several trilogies written that he's been in his head that he's been talking about. But Jared is, for those of you who don't know him, he's okay. There we go.
There we go. I did my homework.
Yeah, exactly. So the guy is an incredibly talented artist. If you don't know him, you do know him based on the creatures, villains, and heroes that he's designed. I mean, the guy designed Thanos, Batman, Spider-Man, and he's got he posted some recent stuff about the new Thor movie, and it's he's incredibly talented, and it's really exciting to have him on board. So he's building out. He's commenting on a lot of technology and social interactions in this art, but he's also building out this futuristic world where these skins are helping humans evolve, and there's a whole story that'll be intertwined in there, and it'll be really fun to dive into these story arcs.
So he's designing the skins for you.
Yes, yeah.
Are they going to look as awesome as this? I want to be this guy. Wowzers. Holy moly. Yeah, I'd love to be that guy. Like, just something really freaky and just like, I think that's what's so fun about the metaverse, though, right? You can be anything. If you go on VR chat, like people dress up and do they come up with the weirdest characters. You've got like some massive puffball and then something that's just a blob that's kind of moving around. You can be anything. And I think that's what's so fun about this space, is that you can have fractal identity. You can be a blob in the morning. You can be a crazy six-legged weird feral cat thing in the afternoon, and then, you know, yourself in the evening. Well, where's the room for expansion with MT skins? Because obviously you want to be as widely adopted as possible, so you have to play to the vast kind of rainbow of possible expressions of oneself that people want, you know.
Well, and what we're able to do inside of the application is read that metadata and reconstruct the asset in real time. So it literally leaves an infinite capability for us to scale the accessories of the assets but we also have the capability to onboard any existing or future 3D or 2D collections into our technology stack.
And
when you say infinite, you know that as soon as this comes out, I'm going to try and break it. I'm going to try and put on a million accessories. And
well, and there's going to be some limit to the tokens that are allowed to render inside of one capture, right? And that's just the technical limitations. But as far as our capability to upload and create new assets to render onto the characters is infinite. So when you ask, what is our capability to allow people to express themselves freely? And it's extremely vast, and we're already working on the capabilities for individuals to be able to create their own assets within our platform.
So one of the things you talk about a lot is interaction. It's social, and I think that's the big thing about the metaverse is it should be in its best possible state, highly social. So I guess my question for you is, what do you do? Are you an NFT project? Are you a
We're a tech company.
You're a tech company, and you build a motion tracking solution that is
mobile
capable.
The way I like to frame it, and what we discuss is, and what we started off with, this pillar of ease of use and necessity for interoperability. It seems like a lot of projects are building their own metaverse, right? Do we have one metaverse, or do we have several metaverses? We can probably have an entire hour-long discussion just on that. But our view is that you have a bunch of separated, isolated metaverses as part of this bigger movement. And our whole goal here is to build infrastructure, right? So you ask the goal of and where the direction of these empty skins are going. That's the gold standard that we're creating. We're saying, in order to go cross-platform, here is how we can demonstrate that. We can take all sorts of collections and apply our technology to them, but by creating this first, what we believe is truly interoperable, or at least a step towards true interoperability, we can show here's how it's done. Now we can build all sorts of algorithms and use AI to interpret data from other six-legged feral cats, and use what we've built to retarget that animation and port them over to platform to platform. But now, fully circling back, we're a tech company, so we're building this markerless motion capture technology. We're building these integrations to be able to use the assets on social media, to be able to go into a game, any really extended reality environment. We have some really fun stuff. You mentioned the interaction, social elements. We're doing some really fun AR things that we're not going to touch too much on them, but the ability to geotag a post with a 3D model within 1.5 feet radius of where it occurred in the real world, and then to be able to come back anytime you want and interact with that. We're going to have a lot of fun stuff to do with that, and actually get people out of that Ready Player One mindset of the metaverse, where they're sitting in their mom's basement wearing a VR headset and interacting in the real world using augmented reality over solely relying on VR.
Yeah, there was a project back in 2017 that I absolutely loved, and it never went anywhere. This is pre-NFTs, and it enabled you to have digital items that you could drop in the real world, and people could come along and pick them up again, like Pokemon Go. And you could add them to other things. So you could pick up a Coke and add it to another Coke, and then you could redeem 5 of them for another Coke. That ability to just drop things in the real world, you can just view with your camera. It sets up so many storytelling possibilities in terms of treasure quests, or just the next Supreme drop is digital, and you go and hunt around New York City for a sneaker or anything else. It's pretty wild what's going to be possible, and it feels futuristic, but no, we're right here, right now. The world is ready for it. I have a question for you. You've called them empty skins, and when I hear that, I hear empty as in there's nothing in them. You must have had that.
So yeah, empty for Metatope, but also empty as an EMPTY. And the idea is that it's somewhat of a blank canvas for the consumer, the user, to step in and embody and fill. And paint the story of their identity and who they are. So that's why, again, we're going very cyberpunk in this drop, but there's much more coming, and this art isn't going to appeal to everybody, right? It's definitely speaking to a certain demographic, and there's much more coming.
Well, I feel like the thing that you have that is exciting and sexy is not necessarily the NFTs or the artistic expression of it, although that's really cool. It's the markerless motion capture technology. And again, I think when I'm thinking about what is going to get TikTokers or the next generation of meta TikTokers, if you want to call them, excited, it's going to be the ability to just swipe left for I'm now a cat, swipe right for and I'm a full body, whatever. And having that just built into a phone and easy to access and almost it's just taken as read. That's very, very cool. And I think we're at a stage now where kids just accept that. So my final question for you is, how does it all work? How do you get fingers to track properly? And it's proprietary. You can't tell me.
No, I mean, look, hey, our patents are already filed. We can talk about it.
Okay.
We've been building for well over a year and a half, going on 2 years, and things have sped up exponentially the last few months. What we're able to do, and our team has done a killer job, there's some open source code that we're incorporating here, but a lot of this is from scratch. And we weren't sure it would be available now. We knew eventually we'd be able to do the live rendering. What we assumed we would have to do at first is record, upload it onto either a cloud server or let your phone handle it if it was capable, and then return a video after it analyzed everything. Now what we're able to do is it's essentially simultaneously capturing 3 things at once. We're effectively tricking your phone into recognizing the facial capture, hands, and then body separately. They're all occurring separately at the same time. What people don't really realize is it's all rendering in real time on that device. There's no cloud solution that we're utilizing. Now we will be incorporating something where whether we use a cloud solution or save the video to where it's able to slow it down frame by frame and get an even better render, because you'll never be perfect when you're doing something live. But yes, that's I hope that sheds a little more light. The idea is, as you started this by saying, hey, you've got this really expensive studio that not the average person doesn't have. Well, most people carry these around with them every day, right? And this concept is, how can we leverage that technology that everybody has and maximize that? So we've got a really incredible on it.
The other part was, let's do something really hard to show how capable we really are, so that everyone else understands that we took care of the hardest thing. Now the rest is, they can trust that we've got the simpler things down. Because a lot of people are saying some of these other components, but they're not delivering anything. And by having this app before we even before we even actually set the drop date, I think that's extremely powerful for the end users who have been burned to date.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you set up a pretty impressive demo in New York. Final question for you. How was that NFT NYC experience for you?
So and just really quickly, we've had a complete overhaul of the AI inside of the mobile application. So what you saw and what you'll see on our YouTube channel from the NFT NYC recap, it's really hard to put a percentage on it, but I would say that the application, the motion tracking, is at least 10x better, and it is now with we can capture the background that's in reality, not only a preset, which is really cool.
Yeah, we knew a lot of stuff is coming. So, sorry.
Yeah, you got to show us a demo. You got to show us a demo.
So this weekend at NFT Expoverse, if anybody's in the Los Angeles area, booth 231, Metatope, come check us out. You'll see the overhauled AI and computer vision technology. And remind me of the last question. Oh, NFT NYC, how was that?
Yes.
It was incredible. So that was us coming out of stealth mode. Nobody had heard of us until then. And we wanted to make a splash. Glad we caught your eye. And the reception has been incredible. Our team has been since that event. So that was 5 weeks ago now. We haven't gotten off calls for the past 5 weeks, probably 9 hours a day. I'm so behind in emails because we have all these potential partnerships and fun things brewing because people are excited. And it's to be able to build something that was started off as a concept and this idea, and to actually see people interacting with it and experiencing joy. I'm not going to lie, we might have teared up a little bit. It was really a surreal moment, and it was really special. So it was beyond expectations. It was absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. I mean, there's even use cases that we really weren't thinking about, but now we're hearing it from multiple different locations that it's changing our priorities on partnerships, and just some of the brands that we're connected with, that we're talking with. We can't really disclose those details, but I'm looking forward to some of the events that we're going to be connected with.
Yeah, I don't think people realize quite how profound full body mocap with a camera is. I don't think anyone really understands it, because I played around with it. We've got mocap suits. We are actively engaged in trying to build motion capture into everything that we do using Unreal Engine in a very sophisticated level. Holy crap, is it hard? It is so goddamn hard to make it good. It's really and to do it with a camera with no markers, it's ridiculous. So I'm excited to see where you go with this, and I hope you'll be able to get into the hands of young creators who can just go create stuff, and it'll be weird and it'll be off the top of their heads and it won't work the way it's supposed to, but that's the best stuff. We don't need it to be perfect, we need it to be imperfect, and the easier it is for them to access it, the better. So get it on a phone and get people making stuff. That's what got me excited about seeing you guys. Everything else maybe kind of still to be decided, but that bit, that's game changing, genuinely. So listen, thanks very much for joining the stream. I hope everyone watching got a little glimpse of why I'm excited about this and where I think this can go, because again, it's early days, but if you think about the metaverse, it needs something to drive the human bit in the virtual space, and this is what it's going to be, and into the future, whatever, but that's going to be it. So listen, Joseph, Jordan, and Walker, if you have anything else left to say, now's the time to say it. But thank you so much for joining me on the show. This was really eye-opening.
Really grateful. Thank you for having us. It's been an absolute pleasure. One thing I will add is check out our socials. We're at the Metatope on across Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We have some fun stuff coming out in the next 2 weeks, including pending Apple's review that's currently ongoing. Our initial application test for everybody to experience in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. So lots of fun stuff in the very imminent future. So please check us out, get in our Discord, follow us. We'll be posting all that.
And I just want to say that I absolutely love the content that's coming out of Defiant. When I saw your guys the first time, dude, it really is. I think the way that you guys are engaging the media and the stories are the future of this space, and how stories are going to be covered. So I just love it. I always follow your guys' content.
Oh, that's very kind of you. You're making me blush. Turn the same shade of orange as my t-shirt. Well, listen, thanks, guys. Yeah, go check them out. It's metatope.com. It's early days, but there's an app. You can download it. You can check it out. And as Jordan said, it's going to get better.
Are you going to come out to LA? Because we did meet in New York, so it's good. It would be great to see you again.
I will definitely be coming out to LA. LA is like my spiritual home. I'm a filmmaker. Hollywood is where I've always wanted to be, and I've never been able to get to. So yeah, for sure.
Let us know.
Thanks, guys. It is time for us to end. As usual, like, comment, subscribe. I know you guys don't do that, but maybe just once in a while do it. And we'll see you on the next one. Have a good one. Peace.
I spent all day in the West Carolina.